I do want to take an opportunity, even though Chairman Moreno will call the meeting to order, to just express to everyone my appreciation that everyone who is here came on time. We are waiting for at least one other party to join us who is making a presentation, so we should start shortly.
Mr. Peeler, come on up to the table with Mr. Thorns, please. Hey, Courtney, she's right there. Courtney, this is the CAO's representative. She does an excellent job. All right, are we ready to start? All right, everyone, thank you so much. Welcome to Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting. It is Wednesday, October 12th at 1 p.m. when we set for this meeting. We had an agenda sent to us by the folks from Gordon Plaza. I want to apologize to you all that it was my fault. I did not communicate with my staff as to some of the things on it, but we're going to take all the agenda items that were submitted to us, which include, obviously we'll do our roll call in just a second. The folks from Gordon Plaza want to do a quick presentation, but you all are the stars today, Mr. Thorns and Mr. Peeler, on the methodology outcomes, report back and confirmation. We can have Q&A and discussion after that. Then determine the next steps, and it says point of contact for each. I think that's already been disseminated. And then we'll set the next Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting after that. So that is pretty much the agenda. Did you all have an opening statement, the folks from Gordon, or can we just get straight to, okay. Who's leaving?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Before I begin, we request the undivided attention of those in attendance, because we have specifics we need to communicate in this meeting for forward movement, and we would like you all to be clear as well. We hope some of this can save us time today. There is blood on the hands of people on all levels and forms of government but this has only been allowed because of the complete and entire cooperation of a local government that has not been held accountable for the honoring and sustaining of life. This local government perpetuates more of the same time and time again, driven by profit and fueled by power and ego. We, as residents of Garden Plaza, have said time and time again that each and every elected, appointed, and hired official of the city of New Orleans may not have initiated this injustice, but you are absolutely responsible for correcting what is now. And we do mean now. It makes no sense that we have fought for the funds to finally be allocated, approved via city ordinance, and transferred over to Liberty Bank, where it is collecting interest as we speak, while we are still fighting for access. Today, we say no more to that. The time is now. We don't need to hear anything more about the law today. The law was broken 41 years ago. We understand the law. And where appraisals are concerned, there are more than one kind of approach to appraisals. And that has been affirmed time and time again in this very chamber. We also are not confused about what an appraisal is. So, as it was said, they need to educate us because the people here aren't educated. Well, that's not true. Because we don't have to have degrees to know right from wrong. What an appraisal is, which too often has been proven time and time again to be used in discriminatory ways. And the difference with an expert analysis report. The Garden Plaza Expert Replacement Cost Analysis Report very clearly provided a clear and transparent methodology that was presented to this current administration and city council since December of 2021. Why are we still here 10 months later trying to plead a case of an injustice that was done to us? The city of New Orleans waited 8 months to even hire an appraisal. An appraiser, the very appraiser that they said was needed by law. We continue to take action to move this forward in ways that honor our community members, because you all have refused to do so in ways that honor our needs, our input, and voices, not to mention our lives. This profit-driven system has run the local people and the infrastructure of this city into the ground, a ground that is unnecessarily crumbling all around us. As residents of Garden Plaza, we know this firsthand because it's our situation, which is more than addressable, and it has been allowed to linger for 4 decades plus 1 year. What more should we expect about any other issues in the city of New Orleans? We want to remind everyone in this place that the United States government has spent over $48 million covering up this situation in the name of non-effective remediation to the soil because they thought we were undereducated, rather than prioritizing our lives and funding our relocation. And the city of New Orleans has allowed it to be the case each and every step of the way. Today, we say no more to that. The time is now. The time is now. The meeting we attended last week on October 6th was to hear the results and agreed upon outcomes of the meeting that transpired between appraiser Jim Thorne and the Garden Plaza expert replacement cost analysis team. September 29th was the deadline by which that information was to be presented to the community and this Garden Plaza task force members, so we could end the debate on methodology and move this process forward. Based on that report back, any following up questions, clarity, or action taken was to transpire on October 6th, which has come and gone. Every single member of the city council voted in favor of that decision via a motion. So to show up and everyone look confused was problematic. Not only was it problematic, but it was disrespectful. Because you're letting us know that we are not valued as citizens of New Orleans who pay tax dollars. Prior to October 6th, we were actually glad to hear that the meeting between the appraiser, Jim Thorne, and the expert replacement cost analysis team took place, and actually had no reason to believe that the meeting was unproductive. The problem came because we did not get any comprehensive or formal update as we were promised about the ultimate outcome regarding the methodology and next steps. Instead, we were met with piecemeal updates about people having been made offers and accepting offers, and then coming here to learn those were perhaps rumors and untruths. We learn from young, they say and you say and I say, it's just mess. Do your job. If we have not been able to trust this local government all this time, what would make people believe that we would believe some sidebar conversations on that day and be at peace with that? All of that, all of it is too much, and it's too much foolishness when clear communication and discussion can happen in what was supposed to be these ongoing Garden Plaza task force meetings to move us forward until this is resolved. We don't have till 2023 for y'all to resolve this. This need to be resolved now. We have waited 41 years for y'all to resolve it. It need to be resolved now, today. On November 4th, 2021, Gilbert Montano was asked whether or not the situation was closer now to coming to fruition than it has ever been. Correct. CAO Gilbert Montano responded saying these two things, and I quote, "There is a specific timeline within our capital budget that you all have supported and voted to support that will begin as a starting point for us to then decide once that calculation methodologies come to fruition. to build up in some sort of way and to rectify this situation. It is probably more of a historical context for others at the table. But yes, it is my understanding that this is something, and yes, this is imminent. This is something that we will figure out, not us. Yo, the city of New Orleans will figure out. The mayor and the council, obviously being a priority. So as technicians, we will address it and figure it out. That was stated on November 4th, and it's almost November 4th once again. November 4th of 2021. It's now nearly 1 year later, and none of you are new to this issue anymore. This is the second term of this administration, and we need those here today to figure it out today, and we need it to happen today. None of us have any time to cater to egos and personal feelings and, oh, I'm all up in my feeling, but when you got this job, you knew what it was gonna be like. Guess what? If they criticized Christ and he was perfect, where do you think you stand in all of it? You serve the people. The people voted for you to serve for them. So serve the people. None of us have any time to cater to egos, hurt feelings, or politics of elected officials who tried to delay this process or manipulate this process for personal gain. And we are talking to all of you. Finally, we are going to make it very clear today about 4 simple things that we need today to move this forward. We ask that you respond as to whether you plan to take action on these 4 things to move this process forward. Number 1, we want to hear the meeting outcomes and agreed upon conclusion that took place between Jim Thorne and the replacement cost analysis team, because we want to know that there will be attention to a methodology that prioritizes non-devaluation and non-discriminatory practices. We want to hear that update today. Number 2, after the report is back, we would like affirmation of forward movement from members of this administration, because we know who signs off on the checks. Number 3, we request that the methodology that prioritizes non-devaluation and non-discriminatory practices be applied, and we receive an offer no later than Friday, October 14, 2022. As a result, to be made to the board so that we may discuss the outcome of such with our families and our community. And 4th and finally, we want the next Garden Plaza Task Force meeting to be scheduled and confirmed on the calendar before we end this meeting and leave this room. We want a timeline that includes when we can go to Liberty Bank and finally get what is rightfully ours. Each one of you go home every night to your homes of healthy living. But every night that we go home, We go home to the trash and the dump that New Orleans put us on. That's what we do. So instead of circling in our neighborhoods, get us out of that neighborhood. Don't circle in my neighborhood. Get us out of that neighborhood.
Okay, so first up, Mr. Peeler, Mr. Thorns, if you want to both introduce yourselves, and you can begin with the first item about the outcomes of the meeting that you all had. You can introduce yourselves first.
Sure. Thank you, council member. My name is Cassius Peeler. I'm a professor of practice and director of the real estate programs at Tulane University.
My name is Jim Thorne. I'm a real estate appraiser and the appraiser for the city of New Orleans.
Okay, whoever would like to start, go ahead about the meeting that you all had and the outcomes.
So we had a meeting, I think September 26th, and the city attorney, the attorneys for the city, Mr. Thorns, myself, and our two other team members, I guess, Ariana Tipper and Chris Oliver were at the meeting. Oh, I'm sorry. You can get it. I can get close to the mic. We had a discussion. It was a 2-hour meeting. It was a long discussion. I think our focus was on what we understood was the concern from the city that it was unconstitutional to follow our recommended methodology. We talked about that methodology. We sent a summary in response to the city attorney and said that we believe that we do not believe that state law requires the appraisal to be the sole basis for the city's offer to residents, but we do believe there's an appraisal that's required. That our report was never intended to be an appraisal itself. It was a methodology to support a future appraisal, but it was also a way forward in December for the council and residents, I think, to move forward then. But that methodology was still the basis that we felt was important for going forward, that we were recommending a replacement cost approach. We mentioned 4 reasons why we think that's important, but we disagreed that there's a separate fair market value test. That was another issue that was raised, but maybe not resolved there, whether in addition to an appraisal, there's a kind of a separate fair market value review. We disagreed about that, and we didn't see any indication, any kind of case law or support from the city, if we understood that correctly. But in the end, we felt that we understood that Mr. Thorns was willing and able to conduct a replacement cost analysis, that he felt that that's part of a standard, something he would consider as a standard part of his appraisal process, and that it was warranted only in appraising very unique properties, which of course we feel these are. So that was our summary that we sent out after the meeting.
Well, I vehemently disagree. The document that's presented by Tulane as a document to represent the value of the properties in Gordon Plaza individually, based on the cost approach that they have used, all fall in my mind as it's a farce. There is the software that they claim they use, according to them, is a software that I went on the internet and looked up. It's something used by insurance companies to deal with claims. I told them in the meeting that we had that appraisers use Marshall and Swift, Dodge, and Means, which are other softwares that are designed specifically for doing the cost approach if you want to rely upon it in an appraisal. I did tell him that if they insisted, I would include that report, the cost analysis, in my report. And I agreed to do that, and I will, and I have no problem with that. The problem is that that does not establish the value of the properties that are related to Gordon Plaza. And if you're going to spend public dollars for a project, then the law requires that you have an appraisal of fair market value. The document that was presented by Tulane is not a document that represents fair market value for a parcel of real estate. In fact, I have no idea how he got to it because there's no backup, there's no support for anything that's said in there, down to the smallest item, which was land value, which I can't even imagine how they even got there. The second part of it was a part that relates to a relocation fee, which is not a part of the appraisal. It's not something in my venue, but that is done generally and almost always if you are doing an expropriation. If you're taking the property and you're going to require people to move out, then you provide that assistance to them to do that. Now, to the big kahuna here, $290 some per square foot to replace these houses is truly misinformation, truly a disaster. So what I did was I looked around at all of the properties, lots of properties in New Orleans, and especially new construction. And I could not find a number anywhere near that. Even the houses that have sold for $1 million, I couldn't find that number in the sale as consistent in that data. So again, I'm confused by this mountain that has been presented here as to what the value is of these individual properties. In addition to that, there wasn't an individual property that was tested using this, whatever they call it, methodology, I suppose. There was no
methodology, yes, that's what we call it.
It wasn't presented in the document. So if it was presented in the document, I wouldn't say, my only answer is it wasn't presented in the document, so it wasn't done. And if you had done that then, I think you would come up with a clear path to where we need to go in terms of value. Now, let me just say to this about Gordon Plaza. Gordon Plaza, 1900s, was a dump. It was revived in the 50s. It was used again in the 60s when Betsy came, and it was closed down and by Dutch Moriel, and they built houses on top of it. That's the history of it. And I agree that while I am not a scientist, I am not an environmentalist, all of the information that I get, that it is a serious problem. And I agree. And so I have acted according to uniform standards of professional practice of the real estate licenses that I hold, and according to the standards to remedy the problem. And the problem is remedied consistent with ignoring and removing ourselves from the impaired area, meaning Gordon Plaza, and valuing the property as if it was in an unimpaired location. And that's what I've done. And that value, I will stand with that value in any court of law before any other appraisers you want to bring forward, but because that is the process for which it's been done. I have also created and researched lots of sales of property. And I am both new ones and ones that have been rehabbed and moderately rehabbed and land. So I have a real good feel for what the values are likely to be. At this point, I am ready to move forward. And in terms of turning it around and getting it done, we'll do it as fast as they allow me to inspect the properties. However, here's what the process is. And I keep hearing this word about methodology. I don't believe there's anyone in here who's ever gone and gotten a loan on real estate and walked in with a cost analysis and say, loan me money on this. And if there's anybody in here, please raise your hand, because I'd like to see how that happens, because you can't do it. You have to have an appraisal. And the appraisal has to rely upon the appropriate method. And for single family residential properties, the appropriate method is the sales comparison approach. That is not to say that you can't include with that for a comparison's sake, the cost approach, which I'm willing to do with no problem at all. But I can't hang my hat on saying this is a fair market value when I run a cost approach. It's not. So your requirement, the city of New Orleans, the state of Louisiana, and the United States requires when public dollars are spent that they have it subject to an appraisal. In the state of Louisiana, I have been a licensed appraiser for an awful long time, and I've been in the practice of real estate appraising for over 40 years. And I've done thousands of residential properties all over the city of New Orleans, the state of Louisiana. And so I have participated in appraisals that are related to environmental issues. I have been into courts, and I have been accepted by the courts and as an expert in the area of what I am supposed to do here. And so what I'm saying to you is that I want to try to eliminate the misinformation that we have here. What Tulane has done is nothing more than a tragedy, because those numbers don't rise to, don't present the level of value of individual properties in that neighborhood. Now, if you have some other way that you want to deal with that, that's perfectly up to you. But as an appraiser, that does not work. It doesn't work. It's misinformation. It mischaracterizes what it's supposed to do. And so.
Oh, go ahead.
Angela, hang on, because I do want Mr. Peeler to respond to that. He just said that what you've done is a tragedy. Can you respond to that?
Well, I respect Mr. Thorns. I think he's making a point. Clearly, the tragedy was 41 years ago, as we heard about before. We're not here. And I think this is important because we've spent so long focusing on appraisals and what an appraisal is or isn't. And I think the fact is that the city is not really trying to buy property. The problem is the city sold this property and they're trying to fix this larger challenge. So the law that we're trying to apply and we need to apply wasn't written for this purpose. So you would, I'm sure, all agree that when the city buys property in a different circumstance, you don't have this kind of engagement with the appraisal. But you also, if you buy property that's not, say, a residential home on a normal street that one of us might own or sell, if it's a commercial property somewhere, there's a very different negotiation. That there's not the same kind of a standard residential appraisal that we know about, but there is an appraisal. That appraisal process includes 3 methodologies that Mr. Thorns agrees are typical and has apparently agreed to include. And so I would say that it's not illegal or unconstitutional, certainly, to consider a cost approach. There's a cost approach, there's an income approach, and there's the sales comparison approach. In normal neighborhoods, certainly the sales comparison approach is best, and appraisers are required to consider the others, even though they most often say the best information is from these similar comparable sales that are recent, and I can make that comparison best with that approach. But there are 2 other approaches that are required to be considered, and that for a unique property or for a place where there aren't similar sales nearby, you would do either an income approach, which we talked about in the meeting. Mr. Thorns gave an example of one where you might have to use an income approach, not a residential property, because it's not an income producing property typically. But there are other examples where you would use the the construction cost approach, replacement cost approach that we use. The other thing you can do is you use all 3 of those and kind of make an assessment. So I think one thing that's misunderstood is the idea that an appraisal is one thing and a replacement cost approach is another type of appraisal. But I think those 3 approaches are considered when coming up with an appraisal. And I think that's why Mr. Thorns agreed that he in fact could consider a replacement cost approach in his own analysis, which is what I understood the meeting resulted in. So an agreement that our methodology could be incorporated into your process, and whether or not you decide to use it, whether or not the council and the city and everybody agrees with it, is a judgment call that has nothing to do with what Tulane has said, or certainly with why we were meeting last month. So that was my understanding of the end of that meeting and the outcome, such as there was one.
I disagree. I disagree with that. I agreed to run a replacement cost analysis in addition to my appraisal, which is based on the sales comparison approach. And not ever did I agree that the process of which Tulane has taken has anything to do with valuation or appraisal. In fact, I would suggest that Tulane has never done an appraisal on anything. And if this is what they're presenting to you as an appraisal, then my position is that, you know, they need to be very careful with calling appraisals, because in the state of Louisiana, you have to be licensed to do an appraisal, and you have to demonstrate that you've had the experience in doing it and the education to do it with. And nothing I hear about what's coming from Tulane pays any attention to or respects the requirements of writing an appraisal. And if you put a number down on a piece of paper and you say this is a value, you have done an appraisal. That is not an appraisal. So let me just say this. I agree that with the approach which is the appropriate approach and the process of which to get to the appropriate approach, that I would add in addition to that a cost analysis. So let me walk you through what is likely to happen so you can understand what I'm talking about. The reason why I would go to a house in Gordon Plaza for an appraisal is because I would like to know what is its square footage and what are the amenities that go with it. Garage, carport, patio. And at that point, Gordon Plaza no longer, the location of it no longer falls into play. Then the next process is to be sure that we find neighborhoods that fit the same profile as Gordon Plaza, and find comparables in those neighborhoods that could be used. And in doing so, you have now gone from the impaired Gordon Plaza to the unimpaired market and valued the property based upon the unimpaired market. And that's what I'm required to do under use map, under my license, and under environmental work.
I have a
Councilmember
question.
Matt,
Can I just read from the city attorney's summary of our meeting?
Sure, Mr.
Because
Peeler.
we exchanged some emails. No one responded to our email saying that there was any problem with it. But ignoring that, the city attorney said that given the unique nature of Gordon Plaza, Thorns agreed that it would be possible to incorporate the cost approach when coming to an appraised value. Thorns did explain that he could not rely solely on the cost approach because new homes are sold on the open market. He stated he would use Marshall and Swift residential estimator to generate a cost approach value. I think that's what we've been talking about. And if everybody agrees that's the right software, that's not part of our methodology, but I don't understand why that's not an agreement to move forward. It sounds like Mr. Thorns.
It is not an agreement, because if I was sitting here talking with another appraiser who understood exactly what the rules are and what the responsibilities are and what it takes to do these appraisals, then I would have a good and equal conversation. But what I'm dealing with here now is some numbers that have presented here that to me just simply I cannot reconcile, and it's driving this whole process, because he has led people to believe that now, you know, the value of their property, and I'm assuming that's what he's saying, is $500,000. That's what's on his sheet, plus other compensation, and which I'm not able to calculate. I can only calculate the value of the real estate, and that's exactly what I intend to do.
And hang on,
Wait, y'all, wait.
please. I'm not sure necessarily, Mr. Thorne, you know, this man does have significant credentials. To say that, you know, he's not necessarily your equal, I don't think is really fair. In fact, Mr. Peeler, can you explain to those who may be listening your credentials in the area of real estate?
Sure. I mean, I went to school as an architect, so I have a professional degree in architecture. I also went to law school. I'm an attorney, transactional attorney, focused on real estate transactions, mostly affordable housing, representing public agencies like the Housing Authority or the city.
Thank you.
May I ask a
Councilmember
couple of
Green.
questions, please? Mr. Peeler, is this a two-lane study?
No, sir.
It is not a two-lane study.
I think we're
Well, I
using
would
that
like to-
shorthand, but it is, we are
I would like
two-lane
us to all
faculty.
not
Yep.
use that language
I like it.
because I have had conversations with members of the administration at Tulane, and they say of the 6,400 employees, many people use the name Tulane because it's on the letterhead, but it's not sanctioned by Tulane University. Is that correct?
That's true. And we have made that point clear many times. I think the
I don't think
shorthand
so.
of Tulane study has come out. We've said it in our emails to the city attorney. We've said it in our summaries. We said it in the initial
Okay,
report.
no, I'm just making sure that the public understands. This is not, because we're still
Sure.
referring.
No,
to
I
it as a
agree.
Tulane Study.
We
Okay,
should call
but
it the Gordon Plaza Residence Replacement Cost.
It's
Report.
important for me to say this. I have listened to and given attention to whoever has asked a question of me. I have a right to ask these questions that I wish to ask. It's very important. It's very important. Yes, I am working hard for everyone, but I have a right to ask the questions that I would like to ask. I've attended every meeting except for the ones that I've been shut out on and wasn't invited to attend. But it's important. It's important.
Okay.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask another question. Mr. Peeler,
Hold up, y'all.
Attorney Peeler,
Hold up,
Attorney
y'all.
Peeler. Attorney Peeler,
I'm gonna do that, Monique. I'm gonna handle that.
Attorney Peeler, I have another question for
Yes.
Attorney Peeler. Could you tell, Attorney Peeler, could you talk to me about moving and relocation costs, for example, how you arrived at a figure of $25,000 per household, and can that stand up with the legal scrutiny?
So we spoke at the time in December. We were asked to come into this for the first time. So the Tulane Environmental Law Clinic has been representing the residents formally. Through that representation, as I understand it, the residents felt that there was an obstacle to moving forward and that nobody had put forward any kind of analysis of the cost of the relocation.
What was your analysis? based
So
on?
we
It's
were
called moving and
invited
relocation
to
costs.
participate at that moment. And we reached out to the Chris Oliver, who is a colleague, has the relationship. It's mentioned in the report. It says where we got that data from. It's a nonprofit that works with other relocations, I think often involving climate change related relocations, but relocations of families in Southeast Louisiana. And that was the number that they gave us.
Mr. Thorns, you have mentioned your willingness to use comparable sales along with cost approach in terms of just in general coming up with a concern. But I think that there is a concern, a legitimate concern of folks who ask this, because if you feel that the appraisal is going to be based on the values of properties where they are now in Gordon Plaza, we-
in Gordon Plaza from the mission, she was 66, she looked 84.
I understand. I'm asking Mr. Thorns a question, because I am an elected official sworn to uphold the law. So I would like to get to the bottom of, please don't bring up my mother. She's not living, but please, I didn't bring up your mother. Mr. Thorns, let me ask you a question.
What is this? Just a waste of time.
Okay, if it's a waste of time, then we need not have this meeting.
Oh, yeah, we gonna have this meeting.
Okay, so it's
I
not a
want
waste
to
of
tell you
time.
about the back doors.
So, Mr. Thorns, let me ask you a question, because there's a concern amongst Gordon Plaza residents. And I can understand this concern that their appraisal, for example, might be based on the fact of where it is right now.
We have
And-
never
Oh,
called
please,
it.
come
an
on, Angela,
appraisal.
please let me ask a question.
No.
No, it is concerned, because for example, in December of
You're- you just
2021, the last
called-
house that sold was for
You just called what
$55,000.
Tulane did an
But you
appraisal.
are not going to be looking at that. You are going to be looking at of houses that have sold in other areas. Could you give an example, just one example of a house that you've analyzed, which is a comparable sale in another area in terms of what it might sell for
all
per
good.
square footage? Well, I don't, no, wait.
No,
can I get an
'cause
answer
we
to that
gotta talk
question?
about the back door deal you made.
Mr. Thorne, can you wait,
We gotta talk about the back door meeting
But-
you had with myself, my board members, Oliver, Miss Turner,
And at that, and the mayor, and at that meeting,
Why is that a backdoor meeting?
well, because you're talking about the meetings that you're not invited to. You didn't invite Moreno and Morale to the, you didn't invite them to the meeting. So that's why I'm saying, don't talk about the meetings that you wasn't invited to.
Okay,
But
that's
my
fine.
point to that
I agree
is,
with- I agree.
hold up, my point with that is that you said in that meeting with the mayor that each house can be paid for $275 a square feet, and that it may come up to the amount more than what we expected. Mr. Jim said that he never heard of that. So y'all getting together, making conversations about what can be paid, what cannot be paid. Y'all trying to make it seem as though that I see that y'all trying to compare prices together, y'all two.
Let me make it
And
clear.
y'all
Let
want
me
to
make
pay
it clear.
us what y'all
I
want
have-
us to get, because the mayor said at that meeting that she would give us $275,000 to $290,000 for our house. If we took that, we could go to the bank the next day. So why we can't get the money that we're asking for that was presented to you all and go to the bank the next day? So y'all playing games, and I'm getting tired of these games that y'all playing. You riding in the neighborhood, stalking our neighborhood, then you're going to different houses. We getting tired of all of this. You're going to the president at Tulane. We getting tired of all of this. The only thing that we want right about now is to go to Liberty Bank, get our money out of Liberty Bank, because Liberty Bank is collecting interest, and the money, the interest that Liberty Bank is collecting, 5 or 6 homes could be moved out by now.
We still haven't had a chance to hear from Mr. Thorns in response to any
Mr. Thorne is
questions.
hooked up with y'all. He ain't got to tell us what we want to hear.
I'm asking a question, Mr. Thorns. Could you give us an example of a comparable property that you might look at in terms of if you were doing a sales comparable comparison approach? Price per square foot is what's important, but could you give me an example?
The properties in Gordon Plaza range somewhere between 1,400 and about 1,800 square feet. There's one probably a little larger than that. For the most part, the houses in Gordon Plaza are in average to good condition, except for there are some houses in Gordon Plaza, a half a dozen or so, that are in poor condition and need to be torn down. And there are 2 lots out there. So let's take the houses that any particular house out there, and let's say it's 1,400 to 1,500 square feet. The idea and the process is for me to go in and take a look at it so I can determine what I am appraising. And then the next step is to go find comparables that I can find that have sold and use that as the value of the property. Now, let me just say this to you. All of the property, there are hundreds and thousands of brand new houses that are out there in the neighborhoods that have sold. I have chose to use only brand new houses. And the reason I chose only to use brand new houses is to deal with the issue that Tulane has presented here about cost. Okay, if you buy a house and it's a brand new house, that represents within itself the cost of producing that property. So the cost part is satisfied. I also agreed, just so that people would be clear about what I was doing, to run a Marshall and Swift cost analysis, and that would be done using the square footage of the property that they now own, and produce that and include that as a part of the appraisal. I must tell you that these houses, I did not make adjustments for depreciation. I did not add land value. I didn't use comparables within Gordon Plaza because there are none. And so it clears the air on what the value is. The value of the houses in Gordon Plaza are the same value as houses anywhere else within close proximity and neighborhoods surrounding or outside of Gordon Plaza. And that's how I produced it.
Do you have a specific property that you could give as an example?
Use mine.
No, you can't. The problem is the point, well, look, maybe I'll answer that question by just waiting, because I understand you have some hesitation with regards to giving a number.
I can give on my property. Let me give on my property.
I know, for example, in Pontchartrain Park,
I could give him my property.
You're not-
No, he
Why-
could
why-
use mine.
But why are people saying that? The last house to sell in Gordon Plaza. sold
Look,
for
he could use my
55,000.
house.
We
I
don't
have-
want, no, listen, this is, this is important for me to say this, and then I can be fussed at the end of the day.
Mr. Thorne, you could use my property.
Well, he's using your square footage of your
Right, mine
But
is
he-
not 1,400.
What
Mine
is
is
it?
28.
28.
I have a 5-bedroom brick home, 2 full beds, 9 flood zone. Tell me how much a brand new home, brick home is.
As soon as you allow me to do an appraisal, I can tell you what the numbers will be.
But you say you have to
But I
find
can't-
some,
but I
correct?
can't- I can't be, I will not disrespect you or anybody in here by trying to sit at this desk and give you a value when I have not done an inspection of the property.
But I
I'm
would
willing
like
do
to,
that. I have no problem. I'll be willing to do that.
I would
And
like to.
I
go
did
ahead.
say in my earlier that there was a house larger than the average houses in the neighborhood. I understand that. And certainly that's going to have a different value than the rest of the houses.
Not your neighbor.
Mr. Thorne,
I don't know how, Well-
It's important for me to say this, that based on what you have said today, in terms of Pontchartrain Park, if you're using comparables from Pontchartrain Park, the comparable properties that I see are $193 a square foot, a couple of them that I've used, which would mean, for example, a $359,000 price on like a 1,600 square foot house. I don't know if that's what you're able to do, but I just want to know that if you're using new houses in that area, I have looked at it and I recognize that. I do also want to emphasize to everyone that yes, every house is a bit different for a variety of reasons. Some people have enclosed certain areas. Some people have 2,800 square feet. Some people have 1,400 square feet. But until we know, we're making an assumption that it's going to be based on the value of a house in Gordon Plaza. Please I will allow everyone to finish. I will allow everyone to finish. The last sale in Gordon Plaza was something that I appreciate the fact that Mr. Thorns, you aren't even looking at it because it's not a comparable. It's $55,000 for a house that sold last year. That is a distressed sale. That is not a comparable. But if you are willing to go outside of the community and look in a community such as Pontchartrain Park, where new developments are taking place, we're looking at $200 a square foot, rounded from $193 to $200 a square foot. I do have a couple of additional questions because are they brick? I know, but what I'm saying is that it's only a square footage. It means that if you choose to build a house, which is your choice, that it would be maybe that a payment would be of $200 a square foot. But your choice is to the house that you build. Some people will not build houses. So the bottom line is that you would design your own house. But okay, I have a couple of other questions though. We determined that this is not an appraisal, that it cannot be defended in court as an appraisal, right?
It's never been presented as an appraisal.
Well, I mean, I understand. I just want to get some clarity because it's important that the software that you use was for casualty loss situations.
The software is to value homes in advance to figure out how much insurance you might need. So it's not after the fact, it's ahead of time. It's also the same sort of purpose that the Marshall and Swift software is used for as well. And it uses similar type.
Why would you have not
information.
used Marshall and Swift then if it is not something that's related to just insurance?
We didn't have, we were asked to do this in a short period of time in December without the resources or funding to do it. So we used the software that we felt was applicable and appropriate, but we've never said it's the only software. The pushback has always been that it's unconstitutional to do anything of this sort, not that our software, it wasn't the right software. We agreed as soon as Mr. Thorne said, hey, I can do a Marshall and Swift analysis. We said, that's wonderful. That's great. But that's not the argument that has brought us 9 months later to this point.
The argument that is.
So can we pick it up from there?
So
I've got to ask Angela if I can ask these
Thorne
questions.
can use the Marshall and Swift software, which I understood him to say he could do and would do, and it's part of the summary that we got. That's why I felt that we had an agreement on the 26th. But I still am not clear whether that he agrees with that or not. But it seems like that software is usable, and you're willing to do it, and we've never said that we have to use our software in it for any reason.
Mr. Thorne, could you explain again, because you said that you were willing to potentially look at the cost approach in terms of a particular property, maybe one or two, to compare it to the sales approach. Have you done that yet? have you arrived at a value? Because I want folks to know that in my,
This is
no,
not
I've got to ask.
anything about what the agenda
Angela,
was
I
about
have got to
today.
be able to ask the question. I have been asked to be at this
We're
particular
not even
position
in
so
debate
that I can
about
ask
any of the things
questions.
you're talking
Angela,
about.
I don't care. I mean,
You're-
honestly, that's you. There are some people who understand exactly what I'm saying.
No,
I'm
no,
asking you
we've
this,
been understanding
Mr.
since the
Thorns.
time we
Mr.
started.
Thorns, have you had an
You are the
opportunity to
one
look at a
who's
cost
trying to get
approach on a particular property
A
to arrive
calamity
at a
that you do
value
not have.
versus a replacement cost? I'm sorry, versus a sales approach.
We don't have any, no, we're
Mr.
gonna
Thorns,
talk, we're gonna
Mr.
talk.
Thorns, Mr.
Miss
Thorns,
Edwina has a question.
Mr. Thorns, okay,
She's gonna
okay,
ask her
please just speak through
question,
it, please.
and we're gonna keep moving this meeting forward.
All right.
We're moving this meeting forward with me asking questions and everyone else
I'm
has an
so glad
opportunity
you-
up here to
I'm
ask
so-
questions.
Listen,
Everyone has not.
I'm just glad, listen.
I haven't seen us have an opportunity, have
I'm
to
just
leave meetings
glad
early.
suddenly you wanna even be in the meeting, sir.
No, don't give me
So
that.
stop.
Don't give me that.
Mrs.
I've been in
Edwina has
every
a
meeting. I've
question.
come to the community and I've been in
Edwina
meetings.
has a question.
First of all,
Okay,
Mr. Green,
let me,
I've asked Mr. Thorns for an answer.
let me,
Mr. Thorns, would you present
Hang
that
on.
answer?
Hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on,
I've
hang on,
asked Mr. Thorns a very specific
hang
question.
on. All right,
Mr. Thorns,
Mr. Thorns, please respond.
okay. Now, I couldn't really hear what you're saying.
my
so-
question is that you have said on the record that your analysis of a property has resulted in a cost approach being less than a sales comparable approach. Is that
That's
a
correct.
case?
That's
Wait, I want to be understand. And that is because in your opinion, if someone analyzes the cost of building a property, we can assume that if they sell it, that they're selling it for more than the cost.
Well, let me say this.
Go ahead, Mr. Thorne.
You were,
No one negotiates the price of a residential property on the basis of cost. It's a comparative process. So what happens is you look at sales of other properties that are similar and have a similar amenities. In the case of Gordon Plaza, a 1,500 square foot house probably would yield, and we're talking about, you mentioned Pontchartrain Park. If you use a number somewhere between $150 a square foot to $200 to $300, I'm sorry, to $225 a square foot, you probably would get a value of somewhere between $300,000 and $330,000.
it's not enough money to build a house.
Now, all I'm saying to you is that the cost approach, we talk about that, but the cost approach is clearly demonstrated in the purchase of a new house. The cost approach is there. Everything that the builder had to do, every nail, every piece of lumber, all the labor, all of it was done. And when he sells that property, he sells it and he makes a profit at it. And so the cost approach is defined in the process of comparables. Now, I agreed, because I wanted to try to put that to rest, that I would run a cost approach from Marshall Swift and include it in the appraisal. And I'm willing to do that without fear of contradiction.
First of all, Councilman Green, I know you want to have answers to your questions. However, it seems that you're going around the neighborhood, you're going to Tulane, you're going to all these places. You should have got them questions
I
answered.
find it disrespectful when
I'd
someone
like
says
to
that I'm
ask Mr.
scoping the
Thorne a
neighborhood.
question.
I have spent a significant amount of time in the neighborhood because I am interested. I know people in the neighborhood, including somebody who I've known for a while, who moved from the Desire area to, I have known a significant number of
Okay,
people.
well, that has nothing to do with us.
So let me make it clear that when I come into the neighborhood, I am not scoping Gordon Plaza. I am interested in Gordon Plaza. I signed
you going behind our back
on the
and doing
campaign
something
trail a document which said that I would support the relocation of Gordon Plaza residents. It is 67 homes and
But you're not
and
supporting
lots,
us. You're
and
going
I
to
am
another
very
level.
strongly
We're
supportive.
not No, you're not. No, you're not.
I have
No,
a
you're
question
not.
for Mr. Thorne.
No,
I
you're
have
not.
a question for, I have a question for Mr. Thorne. Mr. Thorne, you have been in Garden Plaza. I'm asking you this question. In 1980s, when those homes were built in Garden Plaza, were you involved in the process of appraising those homes?
With Chuck Mercadale.
Well, your name is all
Oh,
over the papers from 1980,
Sure is.
where you signed off,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you signed off on them,
and didn't know what you were, or didn't go and look, because your name is all over 'em.
Let me ask you a question.
I'm
In the
listening.
microphone, Mr. Starnes?
To answer your question, when the subdivision was built in 1980, 81 by Chuck Mercadale,
That's right.
and the
Right.
properties were sold off, I did not do an appraisal that was used for anyone in Gordon Plaza to buy the properties. I did not. Since that time, I am sure, if you go to, I have thousands of records of properties I've appraised. I am sure that I have appraised properties in Gordon Plaza since that time, but not in 1980.
Your name is not on anything. I'm asking this question again. Your name is not on one piece of property in Garden Plaza in the 1980s. That's from 1980, from the time they were built till 1989. That's my question.
Well, I cannot say that I have not appraised a property in Gordon Plaza between 1980 and 1989, but your question was, did I appraise property in Gordon Plaza
Well, I
in
just
1980 when they
rephrased
were
my
built?
question.
And I did not.
I just rephrased my question with the time span because your name is showing up on quite a few of them.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to honor the residents of Gordon Plaza and honor the request for today. I want to go on record as saying nobody had any confusion about any of those things that you were asking about, Mr. Green.
Madam Chair, are our
I
questions
want to go
finished from
forward
this
and
dais?
say, we're continuing on, we're
Are the
moving forward
questions
here.
Finished from this
I
dais?
don't know. Are
I
you-
don't remember.
Were you
Ms.
done?
Law being recognized to come before the mic.
Oh, I'm
to take over at this
recognized.
time. I
I
don't
need you
remember.
just to understand
No, I just don't
that
understand the
the
desire
item
to have
number
one person
one was to
speak
get
and
the
not hear
In your
back.
feelings, get out your feelings.
And we are very clear. I want to speak to some good news today. We are very clear that the purpose of us coming here today, it's been the same purpose for the last 10 months, by the way, is to be able to say that the methodology, because we for sure ain't not been calling it no appraisal. We have made it clear time and time again that we consider these appraisals to be inherently discriminatory. And the evidence of this conversation is exactly why. But I'm gonna go on record as saying to clear up, because everybody trying to clear up and they ain't being clear. The whole purpose of the replacement cost methodology that was presented, that we never said was some study based on study from Tulane. Residents ain't been confused about that, nor have we called it an appraisal. You all are the ones who said, according to the law, you need an appraisal. We said, cool. You need an appraisal? There's more than one form of appraisal. We came here once again to clearly say what we had already heard Jim Thorne say, and Jim Thorne provide to the residents in writing that a cost approach is not only feasible, but could be incorporated. He said it again today. Out of all the stuff that was being talked about today, that's the only thing that has come forward, because nobody prior to December 2021 from the city of New Orleans took any kind of action, any kind of initiative to figure it out. So even though the people who stepped up, free of charge, no charge to the city of New Orleans, by the way, are trying to be demoralized in our presence, we say absolutely not. Now, the other good news is Jim Thorne has all the information he could possibly ever have about Gordon Plaza, in addition to the fact that your own document from the city made very clear that he could make a choice whether to walk step by step, home by home, or take a sample. The sample has been provided to you. Machine is making it very clear. Because here's the thing. Not this nickel and diming thing that's going on, we're clear is unnecessary. Why is it unnecessary? Because the city of New Orleans should not be moving anybody back into those homes after this. You guys are acting like we're confused about the appraisal. City attorney, we are definitely not confused about the appraisal. Unlike some other folks, we ain't trying to see nobody go to jail. But people still keep trying to interfere with this forward movement and make arguments about things that it don't have nothing to do with what's going on today.
All right, thank
So let's move
you very much.
forward.
Madam Chair, I am going to respectfully
hearing-
request an opportunity for
We
someone
are
else to
hearing
have an
Mr.
opportunity.
Thorne
to speak.
say that he can incorporate this into
Hang on.
his methodology. That's what this is about. The second thing prior to was to say, is there any objection from the administration about what has been said in regards to that? Because that's the only thing we came here for today for item number 1. Is there an objection from the administration that he can incorporate that into his methodology? If there's no objection, we can go to number 3, but we have to hear from the administration. Who's going to speak on behalf of the administration? Just to say that, because he said it, he said it in the first meeting, he sent it over in writing, and it came in on the notes after the meeting, but nobody told the community.
All
Can we
right,
get
hang on,
somebody from the
hang on, I'm going to ask
administration?
it. So, Mr. Thorne, if you don't object to that, then I'm assuming that the city attorney would not object to that. Is that correct?
What am I
There's no
not,
objection
Madam, what am I not objecting to?
to allowing in for the cost approach to be part of the analysis for your appraisal as well.
No, I agreed to run a Marshall's cost analysis and to include it in the appraisal that I do for the city. I agreed to that.
And is there any and there's no objection from the city attorney? Angela, hang on.
Yes.
Councilmember
We're not
Green
done.
did have the floor before you did. I did not know he had
You
additional
were just taking
questions.
us down a road.
Hang on, Angela. I did
Go
not
ahead.
know he had additional questions. I'm just trying to keep some order here. Please finish your questions, and Angela, you'll take the
He's
floor
taking
again.
us
I
off
thought-
order.
I'm taking up the meeting. I thought that this was a task force meeting and those who were. sitting
Councilmember
here-
Councilmember Green,
Christ.
please ask your questions. Please, Councilmember Green, please just ask your questions. All right,
So,
everyone.
so
hang
it's,
on.
I'm taking nothing personally. It is at the end of the day, what I do take personally is that I listen to everyone and then have one opportunity. This is the first time that we've had an opportunity to have them sit side by side so that we could ask questions. The last time Mr. Thorne came, for example, he was called a crook and they're like, these are my questions. These are my questions. Mr. Thorne, I'm sorry, Mr. Peeler.
Pick up the check. That what it is.
The exactimate
That's what-
replacement cost approach, which is in your formula. Do you feel that that would yield a higher value than a cost comparison approach using properties in an area that has not been tainted by being on top of and associated with a toxic dump?
I just want to clarify, it's not the exactimate cost approach, it's a replacement cost approach. using an
Exactimate?
Exactimate.
I read
software is
from
what
your
we
thing
use.
and I called it exactly what you have. The
Yep.
exactimate replacement cost approach.
Right.
I'm making clear that I'm reading. I'm not just making up and I'm not just being rhetorical. I'm asking you if you feel that that cost approach, once again, the exactimate replacement cost approach would result in a higher or lower value than the comparison approach, than the comparison of properties in a community such as Pontchartrain Park, and it could be others, which has not been impacted by the toxic dump issue.
I have no idea. I think, I do think flood zone is also an important factor, but one of the reasons that we chose to use a software analysis is because I think everything else considered, one of the challenges is just building trust here across the parties. And I think the idea that any standard sales comparison appraisal approach, however standard it may be, is there's an enormous amount of professional judgment. That's why you need a professional like Mr. Thorne's to do it. But if you get two other professionals with 40 years experience, they will come out with somewhat different numbers because they'll make different adjustments and different calculations. So one of the concerns that we had was, in addition to these being unique properties, and in addition to there being an underlying systematic racial bias in appraisals generally, there's still this judgment that is in individual appraisals. So I can't tell you what the sales approach would necessarily come out to be, because if we get three different people, we'll get three slightly different numbers. I can tell you that if you use the Marshall and Swift or our software, whatever, some other software, and you put the same inputs in that you agreed on, you get the same outputs all the time. So that transparency was one of the things that we felt was valuable in this approach, and that has been missing from a lot of the other discussions.
I'll clap too. That's a great, I appreciate that information. I clap too. So I ask you another question. Are you all to get together again, or is it resolved? That there's a dispute that it can't be resolved?
I mean, there's no need to get together again. I understand what Dr. Peeler, I'm sorry,
Mr. Peeler?
Mr. Peeler. Okay.
Cassius, Joe?
Cassius, okay. What he said, and I understand it well. Where the disagreement here is that the software that he used to generate, and I'm assuming you use it to generate the numbers, is not software that is used by professional appraisers to generate replacement costs of properties. And it is done to mitigate claims and insurance claims. And the mitigation of the problem that exists in Gordon Plaza is mitigated by the fact that we're not using, number one, comparables from Gordon Plaza. That's impossible. We will never do that. We're not using any land value from Gordon Plaza because that's all done. Gordon Plaza suffers from environmental issues and it suffers from stigma. So all of that out of the window. The only thing that we have left to us now is to determine the quantity and quantity of properties back in Gordon Plaza, which is fairly easy to do, and then use unimpaired locations and sales to support the appraisal, and to eliminate the conversation about this depreciation and other things. New properties that have been built in the last year or so, or that would be the only comparables used in here. So we would not have the argument of this, that, and the other in trying to determine a value. In other words, trying to get rid of adjustments that are unnecessary.
Mr. Thorne, for example, since you've estimated Pontchartrain Park and you've used it because it's a close community in terms of that. For example, what I've looked at is $175 or more per square foot of sales price homes. I don't want to put you on under too much pressure, but I do want to make this clear. A 2,000 square foot house in Gordon Plaza at $200 a square foot is $400,000. There would be no reason for you to have any reason to deviate if you were using a price per square foot, one house versus another, right?
No, but keep in mind, I would have to find comparables to support that. I wouldn't just pick a number.
I can give you $193 a square foot for two houses in Pontchartrain Park.
Then if that was
So if I approximate a 2,000 square foot, that would be $380,000 for a house in Gordon Plaza.
that'd be correct.
Okay, I just want to make clear. I mean, I just want to keep those numbers out there as a possibility. I do want to say that there are some ways that the city can work with residents who, for example, are looking at houses, and for example, if the market is not exactly what you need it to be able to get into a house without having any note. And I'm willing to work with residents on some issues that I'm familiar with, soft second mortgages, for example, where you don't pay if you stay. Listen, where you don't pay if you stay in the house. But let me say it like this. Let me make.
What makes you think we want the city to put us anywhere?
Who would put you anywhere? Who would put you anywhere? No, but the bottom line is that I threw that out as a possibility. However, I think that in this particular instance, I'd just like to make a statement. First, I'd like to start off. You want? No, I'll make my statement at the end.
Listen.
Hang on, Ms. Amar, hang on. Ms. Amar, one second, Ms. Amar, hang on. Councilmember Morrell, followed by Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Morrell.
I'm going to be very brief because I think that the most important part of an aspect of this of this task force is to try and answer questions the residents have in regards to the process in which appraisals are generated. I do want to say one thing as I came down here. I want to thank Tulane for being available and helping the residents when they needed help. I think that in my brief time being here today, I feel like, Mr. Peeler, you've been subject to a cross-examination. And as a lawyer, I'm very familiar with the cross-examination. And I think that we are remiss if we don't note the fact, as Mr. Peeler repeatedly attempted to point out, when the residents needed help, when no one was giving them the opportunity to generate what the value of property would be, Tulane stepped in at no cost and attempted to fill this void. And this council, which led to this current task force meeting, we asked you to work in collaboration with the city to see what aspects of what you produced could be usable. And I think that we've kind of in this hearing thus far have moved away from that somewhat, and that you've been put in the position where rather than talking about the things, and you've expressed repeatedly the things that you and Mr. Thorne could agree with, there seems to have been still a focus on, for lack of a better term, because as I've been told by my staff, I'm rubbing a hole in my temple with my finger as I listen to this meeting, that rather than focus on the fact that you were asked by the council to work collaboratively with Mr. Thorne, and you've tried to do so, there's been an effort still to kind of attack the study. And I think that that is a tremendous distraction. So I appreciate everything Tulane has done for free. It continues to do. Like I said, that we need more people like Tulane to do stuff like this for free. And I hope they're not, by virtue of this meeting and this hearing, they're not dissuaded in the future for helping out. But I think it's important. I know from Councilman Moreno and my perspective, you guys have been advocates for the residents of Gordon Plaza. And I applaud you for your continued role and your advocacy in trying to say, let's try and get them the best price we possibly can. So I want to thank you for that. I don't think anyone has yet thanked you publicly for that. So I'm thanking you and I'm thanking Tulane for that. And I think that there apparently was some positive response. There was some agreement that there needs to be at least an inclusion of an analysis of like a pseudo replacement cost when you're looking at property. What that number is still in disagreement, but there was an acknowledgement that that needs to be part of the calculation. So that's a good thing. I do think I would be remiss if I didn't say, I have said consistently on this council that the best meetings to resolve issues this complex are meetings that take place in public with everyone present. And I will continue to say that I don't know what kind of noise is going on about meetings, but I've only been to one Gordon Plaza meeting, and that was the meeting where the residents asked me to come to a meeting. So as far as any multiple meetings that I was invited or not invited to, I haven't been invited to any meetings, but for the one meeting the residents invited me to which I showed up to, and it was a very productive meeting where residents expressed their frustration and what they need to be assured of to have a productive process that could go toward the solution. I will say, because I'm not a member of this task force, and Councilman Thomas and I have something in common in that on specific days we have to go pick up our kids. But what I will say is this: I want the residents to stay engaged. We're here today, this far in this process, because of the residents. And I don't want to lose sight of that. But for the tenacity and the passion of the residents trying to get a solution, we would not even be here. I mean, think about this. When there was council elections last year, you demanded all of the council candidates to take a position on Garden Plaza. And the reason why we're here with money on the table to resolve this is because you demanded it, and the council that was elected heard you. We are going to resolve this. We're going to resolve this, and we are going to resolve it in a public and transparent manner, because I will tell you, in my one meeting with Gordon Plaza, residents asked for by them, Angela was there, that's all they asked for. We want methodology that is published. We want information that is published. We want an agreed upon set of facts so we all know what we're talking about. And when I hear the frustration today, and hopefully this will resolve some of it, and I think Tulane with me and Storm was trying to resolve some of it too. The more we know what's being done behind the scenes to compute these offers, that will give at least the public some comfort that it's being done transparently. If we're not having transparent communications, we cannot be surprised that people who've been on a dump in a fight for 42 years, but make sure I get up 42 years, that they might have some trust and trepidation issues with the way government has treated them. So whatever we're gonna do, it needs to be transparent. The residents have to be updated as we change things, because if it's not, you cannot be surprised or blame them for questioning the process if it's not transparent. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas.
First of all, thank you. As I listen to the presentation, to me, it seems like there's an agreement in terms of appraisal versus cost analysis and whether cost analysis can be used as part of the appraisal. So it seems to me like the only way for us to get beyond this point, and I think Ms. Kinlaw is correct, how do we move this? Because we seem to be spinning our wheels, going back to the beginning of back to the same point over and over again, is that there has to be some working relationship between Mr. Perry, Mr. Peeler, and Mr. Thorns. And it can't be adversarial. It has to be, how do we work this out in the best interest of the people who've been through this hardship, right? And so for me, is that if the appraisal methodology is used and the cost analysis methodology is used, especially if you're considering environmental racism, hardship, loss of life, and all of those other, and all of those other issues, then I don't understand why you guys can't get on the same page unless they come into the relationship adversarial, or there's not a willingness to work this out. And if there's not a willingness to work this out, then that needs to be stated, because we'll never get beyond where we are right now. And I would hope that the purpose of where we are right now is, how can we get to a point where we're using something that's fair, where residents could even say whether they agree or not, where people could say whether you're close or not, or people could say, well, how do we make up fill the gap or not? And for me, the most frustrating thing is that we're not there yet. Look, Councilmember Green, and there's always politics, there's always people, that's just the nature of it, right? And you shouldn't take this personal, because, I've been around a while, and there's a lot of people who've represented this district. But this is the first time we've ever been in a meeting or meetings where there's an opportunity to close the deal. So pat yourself on the back for that. But the issue is, how do we get the people who are gonna cover us with the law, cover us with the process, to get in the room and say, now it's time, now we agree to get to a point where we're trying to close this deal. Now, so my question to you, Mr. Thorns, and for you, Mr. Perry, is, are there any laws or policies that prohibit you guys from getting on the same page? And if you, and where will we be in violation of the law? Where do you think, Ms. Stones, because you mentioned the law a few times, where would you be in violation of the law or derelict in your duties if you did what or didn't do what?
Where would I be in violation?
Because if we're concerned about making sure we follow the law, because if you don't follow the law, somebody sues, right? Or somebody takes you to court. What's the prohibition for you, or for you guys, or even you, if you're representing the residents? Where's the jeopardy in coming up with something where everybody wins? Or where's your fear, since you've mentioned you don't want to violate the law, you don't want to violate the code of ethics in terms of appraisal?
Well, Councilman Thomas, my concern always is, if I'm going to write an appraisal report and affix my signature to it, that I have followed the requirements of my license and the requirements of the standards for appraisers. And as it relates to that, the standards require me to make a write-in appraisal and support it, and it must be transparent. And so outside of that, I'm willing to talk to anyone about anything. Maybe there is other solutions, but I'm not saying to you that I can reconfigure the appraisal to end around what facts are out there as it relates to values of real estate. Now, as I listen to the conversation, and this is to be very candid, it seems that we're talking about things other than real estate values. So if we're talking about something other than, real estate values, that is truly outside of my purview, and I can't advise you on that. But what I can tell you is that there may be other ways that you all can find ways to deal with if in fact there is a shortfall or there is a deficit. And I heard Councilman Green mention something, and I just wanted to clear that up because I heard your respond to it. And he said something about a soft second. So let me explain to you what.
This is just irresponsible. I mean, can he speak?
Let me just explain to you about what he said. A soft second is actually not really a loan, it's free money. What happens is it requires you to do a certain thing for a certain period of time, and then after that, the cost of that soft second just evaporates, it goes away. It's not a cost to you. So I just want to be clear about that. If in fact you didn't know that, I'm pretty sure you do.
Well, it's not a note.
And there's no note.
It's not a note, but this is not the place to talk about it, but I am willing to come and speak to anyone when they say that I'm prowling in a community. If anyone wishes to call me as they. Why are you so concerned about Councilman Thomas's call? But I think, do you think Councilman Thomas can ask? I don't think that.
Councilman Thomas, you still have the floor.
Councilman Thomas has the floor.
Well, so my question, well, first of all, ultimately, at the end of the day, there needs to be some cooperation on both sides. You don't want to violate the code of ethics in terms of your license. Mr. Perry and what he's doing wants to make sure that all of those other factors are considered. This is not a unique situation if you look at environmental racism and what's happened around the country. And I think too often we forget that, you know, one in four African Americans live within 2.5 miles on a toxic land site in this country. We've never ever had an opportunity to do it the right way. And I'm just speaking personally for me. And I think what we have now is an opportunity, you know, adversarial relationships, unless we come to some agreement, it rarely ever solves anything. But I think we have an opportunity here to make history, also to make a lot of historical wrongs right. And I also think we have the opportunity to use the methodology and the cost analysis, especially if we're looking at the inline goal of making sure these families they're not penalized and they're not put in a situation where it costs them more, especially after being in a situation that was unjust from the beginning. And I think sometimes, because this has been contentious, that we've lost sight of that. So, I just, for us to keep going back to square one doesn't work, right? And I think the only thing that it works is for you guys not to have an adversarial relationship, right? But to have a relationship where we say, we're going to make these families whole. We're going to make this situation right while we follow the law. Now, but what I do understand, and not being a lawyer, like some of my others who are great attorneys, is that if you do violate the law, that puts the whole thing in jeopardy. Because then a judge could rule everything that we've done is moot. But we can't get there unless there's a spirit of cooperation, unless everybody's working together to make this right. And unfortunately, we ain't there yet, and that's unfortunate. So still, as an attorney, Is there anything that violates any specific law?
No, but I will say, because I think Mr. Thorns would say this, that he's got to produce an independent appraisal. So we can work together, we can communicate collaboratively, but the appraisal is his, he signs it, or whoever the city and the residents.
So he produces his independent appraisal. Your methodology takes in consideration the cost analysis, and you guys come together and say, based on your appraisal and based on your cost analysis, this is where we are to move to the next step. Have I said anything wrong?
I would defer to Mr. Thorns, but I would say that the cost appraisal or the replacement cost analysis is part of his appraisal, and he would do the analysis. He wouldn't take an analysis.
So all that would be considered.
But he would consider it, and presumably the cost, the construction cost, replacement cost analysis would verify or be consistent with or be distinguished from in his own analysis from the whatever numbers he comes up through sales comparisons.
But we have to get
But that would be an internal thing that
Right.
is completely his or whatever appraiser does the
Well,
work.
we have to get to that point.
Sure, and I thought we were there on 26. I think we're still there now, from what I understood. But
Okay, thank you. If someone can produce some law for me at some point, I'll have the attorneys who work for me take a look at it. But I just thought maybe there was some legal obstacle that was preventing you guys from putting your processes together to come up with a solution.
Councilman Thomas, I would certainly love to spend some more time with
Productive time.
Mr. Peeler to discuss.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, all I'm saying is I'd like to spend some more time with him. If he's up to that.
And I'll also say that our report was for much more than just the appraisal part, where this is a larger real estate transaction. There are many other questions to be addressed, I'm sure, before people get checks and sign documents. So we will continue, as the residents request, we'll continue to help them understand some of the opportunities and some of the things that might be put in front of them. We'll stay involved through that transaction, but certainly I'll talk with Mr. Thorns anytime.
Thank you.
So just from my understanding, what is the next step?
Can we? Can,
Anyone, either one of you can answer.
Well, from my perspective, if you want an appraisal, then that's the next step for me, is to write an appraisal. Now,
I want to understand how you go about that. Are all the residents receiving a letter? How is your office contacting residents? Are you going through Ms. Godshall? I want to understand first how is everyone getting contacted?
well, as far as I know, a letter has been written to all of the residents in Gordon Plaza, and they have been given my name and an email address and a phone number that they can call. And if I'm called, I will make an appointment with them, go out to the property, do my normal inspection and write a report. So far, I've done several.
And you've done, hang on, you've done 7
I
homes,
said
lots?
several.
Several. Okay, you've done several. What's the number then?
In terms of confidentiality and privilege for the clients and my clients and the residents, I'm not at liberty to talk about specifics.
Yeah, I'm not asking for specifics. Hang on. I'm just wondering how many appraisals you have done.
6.
You've done 6. In Gordon Plaza, yeah. Okay, so is there a way to have a property appraised without having to go into the property? Is there a way that you can do it with, I mean, I know the assessor is able to do that, but are you able to do an appraisal if someone does not want you going into their property?
I certainly can.
You can. Okay. I think that's an important question to be answered, because we've certainly gotten that question before. So the next step is for residents who received a letter to contact you. How many have contacted you? I know you've done 6 appraisals, but how many have contacted you?
A handful.
How many?
A handful.
A handful.
Maybe 2 or 3, 4. Some of the appraisals that have been done included some vacant lots that are back there. There's no need to talk to anybody about that. Okay. And some have been done, or houses that are completely dilapidated and cannot it cannot be rebuilt or renovated. So that makes up the total of 6, and a couple of those are properties that people live in.
Okay. All right, Angela.
One comment, and then we're going to talk specifically next steps, please. We're ready to talk about next steps.
Hey, Max.
Thank you. Maxwell Chardulo, I'm with the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. I just want to bring a fair housing perspective to this. After hearing a little more specifics about how this works from Mr. Thorns, that he is going to look at unimpaired neighborhoods and comparables in those unimpaired neighborhoods. And that sounds like it's supposed to be some sort of an objective process, but I want to be clear that there's actually quite a lot of subjectivity in which neighborhoods you choose, right? And because if you choose the same 3-bedroom home in a white neighborhood versus a black neighborhood, there could be $100,000 difference there in the price of that home. And that is certainly something that we figured out during the road home process. And it cost the state and the federal government a $62 million settlement. And I think it is particularly concerning that it is a contractor for the administration who's going to be choosing exactly which neighborhood he decides to compare to, when the administration has at every turn tried to spend as little money as possible on this process. And so I just want you to take that into consideration when we talk about why it is so important to use the cost replacement and make sure that that is factored in. That is how the federal government and the state government settled that lawsuit around the road home, is they agreed to use replacement costs so that it would not be discriminatory. So, thank you.
Angela.
5 minutes, please.
Thank you for that, Maxwell. Because I promise, I feel like we've been talking about this for 10 months now. And so I just want to go ahead and say where we are and next steps. So we came in here because we wanted to hear the report back. We've heard it. We came in here because we just simply needed to know that there was no more debate about something that should have never been debatable, because the cost approach is a part of the toolkit. We've confirmed that. We've heard from the administration, there's no debate there. Mr. Peeler has made it very clear that anytime that there's a need for a call, the door is open. And we also understand, based on attorneys in the room and attorneys outside of the room, that Mr. Thorne is able to move forward with a sample. He's also confirmed that he can, based on the question that was asked by Helena Moreno, could move forward whether he's in the property or not. So with that being said, I'm not going to get into how you got 2 calls and got 6 appraisals. I'm not going to ask you about that. I'm not asking. I don't want to even open it up. I don't want to open it up. But what I'm going to say is this meeting right here was for clarity, to get all things in order if they were not in order prior to today. If they were not in order prior to today, because the public and the community is clear and on the same page, that it could get in order today. So with that being said, Ms. Monique came up and made it very clear that if we could hear back no more debate from the administration, we can move on to the next step. Ms. Sheena has also said that she is more than willing to allow her property to be used to apply this very clear, non-devaluative, non-discriminatory appraisal process. We've never called this report an appraisal, never. We understand that it's a methodology that's opened up this discussion. We're ever so grateful, and now we can move forward. The request was, in the application of the methodology, that an offer could be made this coming Friday. We believe that that is more than achievable, because it's been a long time now, many, many days, months since the last meeting, and because we have the evidence of somebody calling and appraisal being generated and dollar amounts being generated. We're all on the same page here. Ms. Sheena says her property can be used for this sample. So we'd like to ask that this methodology that we have shared agreement about can get applied and an offer can be made by Friday. We would also like, and this is the last thing we'd like, because to be honest with you, this time we didn't come here to be in here for a long time. The last thing is we would like everybody to open up their calendars and schedule this next Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting, because from there, when the offer is made on Friday, we would like to continue moving the train forward. And we are serious about moving it forward as peacefully and seamlessly as possible, because we're not the ones with the confusion. So we want to know, is that feasible? Because we believe it's feasible, and we're going to sound the alarm about how feasible it is.
May I ask for clarity? Are you saying that you would like to see an appraisal on Ms. Sheena's property as an example?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, today's Wednesday, so I have to look at you. But if Ms. Sheena wishes to have that done, just as everyone else can call Mr. Thorns, but the question is, Mr. Thorns, I don't want to put any words in your mouth. By what day could you finish it and it be done so that people can look at it?
We like
I understand, but it's Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Can it be let Mr. Thorns? Can we let Mr. Here's an issue of concern. Can we ask Mr. Thorns? Mr. Thorns, you've been asked if we could do it by Friday.
I am not going to be able to produce an appraisal by Friday of a property I have not inspected. So, I mean.
You gotta make it do. Why we gotta get Fred?
I couldn't hear the answer. Can you,
I'm not surprised that we couldn't hear it.
okay, Eugene, stop. Mr. Thorne,
I can't complete an appraisal by Friday on a property that I've not seen.
when can you complete it by?
Mid next week.
Mid next week?
Mhm.
Can you give me a specific day?
Wednesday.
Wednesday of next week.
Wednesday of next week?
If I get a chance to inspect that property on tomorrow or so, I'll have it finished by next Wednesday.
Does that,
Ms.
hang
Sheena?
Hold on. Yes, so we need to, would that work for your schedule for him to come to your house?
I don't know.
Can we pause for a second? Can we pause for a second, real quick?
I can get an appointment. Give me your number. I'll call you. You call me.
Just
and we'll work it out.
for clarity, real quick, I want to go on record as saying, after the last meeting was over, when this meeting was wrapped up, and we thought we were making progress going forward as it relates to the September 15th meeting, that very night, Mr. Thorne, there have been multiple community members saw you in the community immediately after the meeting was over. That same night. So we're asking again, because we want to move this forward. We're not trying to prolong this process, to give the time and energy for you to do the appraisal and bear the result.
I will have the appraisal. If you ask me to do it, I'll have it ready for next Wednesday, and that's it. I can't do it any faster.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So can we ask this?
Hang on, I can't hear. I cannot hear.
So can we ask this? If the appraisal is gonna be done by Wednesday, can we look at our calendars for that Friday so we can have the follow-up Gordon Plaza
Yes.
Task Force meeting, please?
All right, I'm looking on the 21st. That's the 21st, if everyone can pull up their calendars. I'm texting Paul Harang right now, our Chief of Staff, to see if that's available.
Yeah, I have a meeting in the lower nine. Just put it down. I'll rearrange my schedule.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Let me just call him. All right, 10 o'clock on the 21st, work for everybody? Yeah. Hang on. So you can't do 10 o'clock? Well, it's not evening now. It was 1 o'clock today. You want to do 1 o'clock? Oh, you're on fall break. What about, I've got speaking engagements in the afternoon. Can we do 1 o'clock on the 21st? 1 o'clock on the 21st? It's a Friday. Angela, does that work?
No, that's not Angela's decision.
I'm
It
sorry.
works
what
for, it
day is
works
the
for them
21st?
up here
The 21st is a Friday. What time?
at 1 o'clock.
At 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock.
Are we peaceful with that time? Okay.
All right, seems like everyone's good with that. All right.
Yeah.
Let's just I want to go and make sure that everybody's clear on what we're expecting for the 21st meeting. So, Mr. Thorne, you're going to get together and do the appraisal, and you will have that appraisal back on Wednesday. That allows it for Friday on the 21st for there to be conversations about the appraisal and you know what occurred and what you determined.
When I complete the appraisal, I will send it to Shea Gardner and the city attorney, and they will handle it from that point. I won't be
Okay.
doing anything else with it except passing it on to them.
Okay, great. Madam City Attorney, can you please send it to me so that I can send it to the residents as well, to Ms. Godshaw? Sorry. Oh, okay. Okay,
So if she gives permission for me to release the appraisal for her property, I will do so.
do you, and then
That's fine.
you give permission for your appraisal to be released?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I'll send it to
May
you.
I ask the city attorney to
Okay,
say into the
thank you.
microphone what you just said with regards to the release of appraisals?
I stated that people whose properties are appraised have an expectation of privacy. Therefore, appraisals will be released with the property owner's permission only.
which she has given.
Yes,
Thank you, Madam City Attorney.
you're welcome.
All right, so we will, go ahead,
One
Angela,
final
another thing?
So just if you can, one final thing, can you recap the meeting date and time one more time for a couple people that did not hear? We just want to make sure that that's accurate. It's
Friday, 1 o'clock.
the 21st.
We're recapping what
Sure.
Mr. Thorne determines based on the appraisal that'll happen by next Wednesday. And the city attorney has said that she, has heard that there is a verbal agreement that the appraisal will be released for all of us to be able to view.
We also just want to note that it's going to be really important to please remember the sharing from Maxwell, because one of our concerns in this meeting was just throwing out a random neighborhood. And we've made it very clear that we understand and can smell devaluation and can smell discriminatory practices when they even surface. It is imperative that everybody remember there are people in the state of Louisiana, we can look at Baton Rouge as an example, who are literally relocating people as it relates to moving them out of flood zones. We don't want to move people back into flood zones. So there's no need for us to pick properties to compare to that are in flood zones. That's very important. It's also very important to know that, and City Attorney and Mr. Thorne, this may not in any way, shape, or form be a reflection of either of you, but I just want to go on record as saying that in July of 2021, apparently there had already been some appraisal type activity going on with the properties that were yielding a potential buyout numbers that have not even hit the numbers we've been hearing about. So if that was transpiring back in July of 2021, then we are certain that if people were able to generate those numbers back in July of 2021, then there's no way in the world that any of these numbers would come back more faulty than those. And we're certain of that. July of 2021, a presentation was given to us.
All right,
Sharon Robles. So we just want to note that.
so we will see everyone again coming up next Friday, 1 o'clock on the 21st. All right.
Okay.
Thank you all. We're adjourned.